take a good look at the men in the footage from 1945. They do not look like warriors. They look like ghosts. Walking skeletons digging into the dirt with callous hands, desperate for a root or a tuber to eat. Their eyes are hollow, void of the fire that once defined the Imperial Japanese Army. It is a wretched sight. But make no mistake, these were once the most feared fighting force in the Pacific. This was Rabaul, the fortress, the Pearl Harbor of the South. At the height of its power, Rabaul was a monster that threatened to swallow Australia whole. It housed 100,000 elite troops, 300 modern warplanes, and a deep water harbor filled with the Emperor's finest warships. Allied generals calculated that taking this fortress by force would cost 50,000 American lives. It was predicted to be the bloodiest siege of the entire war. But history played a cruel joke on the Japanese Empire. When the war ended, Rabaul surrendered without a single American boot touching its beaches. Those 100,000 samurai inside didn't die from bullets or bayonets. They were left to rot, trapped in a prison of their own making. How does a fortress that strong simply wither away? How does an army of 100,000 men become a collective of starving farmers? The answer lies in the black waters of Empress Augusta Bay. It was here, on a stormy night in November 1943, that a maverick American admiral named Arleigh Burke decided to break all the rules. He didn't just defeat a Japanese fleet, he humiliated them. In doing so, he triggered a chain reaction of rage in Tokyo that led the Japanese High Command to make a fatal mistake. One that would doom those sprawling garrisons to a slow, agonizing death. To understand how this house of cards collapsed, we must go back to the ghost that haunted every American sailor in the South Pacific. The ghost of Savo Island. In 1942, the waters around the Solomon Islands were known as Iron Bottom Sound. That name was literal. The seabed was littered with the rusting hulks of Allied warships. At the Battle of Savo Island, the Japanese Navy proved they owned the darkness. They possessed giant binoculars that could spot a silhouette on the horizon long before an American lookout blinked. They possessed the Type 93 Long Lance torpedo, a weapon of terrifying range that left no wake. In 40 minutes at Savo, the Japanese sank 4 Allied heavy cruisers. It was a massacre. For the Americans, the night became a time of terror. They felt like amateurs fighting professionals. They felt blind, and the Japanese knew it. By November 1943, the Americans made a bold move. Operation Cherryblossom, landing 14,000 Marines on Bougainville. Strategically, this was a knife held to the throat of Rabaul, only 200 miles away. If the Americans held Bougainville, Rabaul would be within easy range of fighter escorts. The Japanese High Command knew they had to cut this throat before it could scream. The response was swift. Vice Admiral Sentaro Omori was ordered to take a powerful heavy cruiser fleet south to smash the landing force. Omori was confident. He viewed the Americans as inferior sailors, clumsy in the dark. He believed all he had to do was show up, and the Americans would panic just like at Savo. He sailed down the slot with the swagger of a man hunting rabbits. But Omori didn't realize the rabbits had evolved. Standing in his way was Task Force 39, and a man about to rewrite the textbook on naval warfare. Arleigh Burke. Arleigh Burke was aggressive, loud, and hated the old ways. He realized the problem at Savo wasn't courage, it was tactics. For years, U.S. Navy doctrine chained destroyers to cruisers as shields, robbing them of their speed. Burke called this nonsense, famously declaring that a destroyer is not a shield, it is a sword. Burke developed a new doctrine for Destroyer Squadron 23, soon to earn the legendary nickname, the Little Beavers. His plan was revolutionary. He would unchain the dogs. He would split his destroyers from the main cruiser line, letting them race ahead into the darkness at 31 knots. They would unleash a wall of torpedoes before the enemy detected them, then turn away sharply. By the time the torpedoes hit, the destroyers would be gone. As the enemy formation descended into chaos, the American cruisers sitting comfortably in the back would open fire. A classic 1-2 punch. Burke had one more ace up his sleeve: technology. While the Japanese relied on optical training and the samurai spirit, Burke relied on the SG radar and the Mark 8 fire control system. This new generation of microwave radar painted a picture of the battlefield in total darkness. Burke drilled his men relentlessly to trust the green glow on the screen more than their own eyes. He was turning naval warfare from an art form into a science. On the night of November 2nd, 1943, the test began. Rain squalls swept across Empress Augusta Bay, reducing visibility to 0. In the old days, this was a death sentence. Tonight, it was an advantage. At 2:30 in the morning, the radar on the USS Montpellier picked up blips at 20,000 yards. It was Omori's fleet. The Japanese were sailing blind. Burke wasted no time. He unleashed his little beavers. The destroyers tore into the darkness, launching a spread of torpedoes before peeling away. Minutes later, the darkness was torn apart. The Japanese cruiser Sendai, Omori's flagship, was slammed by explosions. Confusion reigned on the Japanese bridge. Omori, stunned and unable to see the attack source, made a decision that sealed his fate. He ordered his ships to turn on their searchlights and Firestar shells. It was a fatal error. In the pitch black, those searchlights simply announced exactly where the Japanese were. It was like turning on a flashlight in a dark room while a sniper watches you. The American cruisers had their radar-controlled guns locked on. The moment the lights flickered, thousands of shells poured onto the Japanese fleet with terrifying accuracy. The Japanese formation collapsed. It wasn't a battle. It was a brawl in a closet. In the panic, the heavy cruiser Myoko slammed into the destroyer Hatsukaze, shearing off her side. It was a symbol of the entire operation. Absolute chaos. Omori realized he had walked into a trap. His heavy cruisers were being picked apart by lighter ships he couldn't even see. Humiliated, he ordered a retreat. The Americans had won. But the story doesn't end here. If it did, Augusta Bay would just be a footnote. What happened next turned a tactical victory into a strategic catastrophe for Japan. News of the defeat reached Admiral Minichi Koga, Commander-in-Chief of the combined fleet. Koga was furious. A powerful force of heavy cruisers beaten by light cruisers and destroyers. It was an insult to the Bushido Code. Koga wanted revenge immediately. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was thinking with his anger. In a fit of rage, Koga made a decision that cost Japan the war in the South Pacific. He ordered a decisive counteroffensive to Rabaul. He pulled 7 heavy cruisers, the core strength of his fleet, from the safety of Truk Lagoon and sent them rushing south. His plan was to refuel them and launch a crushing counterstrike. It was a gamble that American Admiral William Bull Halsey was waiting for. Intelligence spotted the formidable gathering of warships crowding into Rabaul's harbor. Halsey didn't see a threat. He saw fish in a barrel. Halsey famously said he would hit them hard, hit them fast, and hit them often. On November 5th, just 3 days after Augusta Bay, Halsey launched a devastating carrier air raid from the USS Saratoga and the USS Princeton. We must pause to appreciate the sheer audacity of this move. Up until this moment, naval doctrine stated that aircraft carriers should never attack land-based fortifications. It was considered suicide. The stationary, unsinkable island would always beat the floating, vulnerable ship. But Halsey threw that rulebook into the ocean, along with the Japanese plans. He introduced a new era of naval projection where mobility and overwhelming air superiority could crush static defenses. The pilots from the Saratoga flew into the teeth of Rabaul's defenses, 150 anti-aircraft guns and dozens of waiting Zero fighters. And they turned the sky into a graveyard for the Imperial Air Force. The scene at Rabaul was apocalyptic. The Japanese cruisers were clustered together, refueling, stationary targets. When American dive bombers screamed down, the harbor turned into a cauldron of fire and oil. In hours, the pride of the Japanese Navy was smashed. 6 of the 7 heavy cruisers were wrecked, forced to limp back to Japan for months of repairs, effectively removed from the war. Koga's gamble had failed spectacularly. By trying to avenge a small loss, he sacrificed his main battle fleet. Terrified of losing more ships, the Japanese Navy withdrew completely from the region, leaving Rabaul alone. This brings us to the final, tragic chapter, the death of Rabaul. With the Navy gone, the 100,000 troops on the island were exposed. They expected an invasion. They dug tunnels and machine gun nests, ready to die for the Emperor. And describing them as mere tunnels is an understatement. Under the command of General Imamura, the Japanese constructed a subterranean metropolis. We are talking about nearly 350 miles of underground fortifications carved into the volcanic rock. They moved entire hospitals, repair shops, and ammunition factories underground. They even dragged barges into coastal caves to hide them from American bombers. It was an engineering marvel born of desperation. The Americans could bomb the surface until it looked like the moon. But the heart of the Japanese army was beating safely, hundreds of feet beneath the earth, waiting for a battle that would never happen. But the Americans didn't come. General Douglas MacArthur and Admiral Chester Nimitz had a different plan. Operation Cartwheel. They realized they didn't need to capture Rabaul. They just needed to neutralize it. They bypassed it, capturing smaller surrounding islands like Emirau and the Green Islands. They built airfields in a ring around the fortress. Effectively, they put Rabaul under a siege of logistics. American planes and submarines cut off every supply line. No food, no ammunition, no letters from home. The massive garrison was stranded. They had rifles, but no bullets. They had planes, but no fuel. Most importantly, they had no rice. The command structure shifted from military operations to agricultural survival. Samurai put down swords and picked up hoes. Officers calculated ration calories instead of artillery coordinates. American pilots flew over Rabaul just to observe a ghost town. Japanese soldiers waved white flags not to surrender, but to beg for mercy from the bombing. The Americans coined a phrase for this strategy, leaving the Japanese to wither on the vine. It was brutally effective. Why spend 50,000 American lives storming a beach when you can let the enemy starve? By 1945, the garrison was decimated. Men boiled leather belts for soup. They ate lizards, rats, and eventually, silence. The mighty fortress intended to launch the invasion of Australia had become a sprawling prisoner of war camp, guarded by the ocean itself. When we look back at the Pacific War, we often focus on Iwo Jima or the atomic bombs. But the neutralization of Rabaul teaches us a different lesson. It teaches us about the danger of pride. Japan lost Rabaul because they lacked adaptability. Admiral Omori lost at Augusta Bay because he underestimated his enemy. Admiral Koga lost his fleet because he let anger dictate his strategy. And the 100,000 men at Rabaul paid the price. Meanwhile, the Americans showed a terrifying ability to learn. They took the humiliation of Savo Island and turned it into the victory of Augusta Bay. They used radar to blind the masters of night fighting. And ultimately, they showed the restraint to bypass a strong point rather than smashing their heads against it. In the end, Arleigh Burke's 31-knot dash into the darkness did more than sink ships. It tipped the first domino that brought down the mightiest fortress in the Pacific. It proved that in modern war, a cool head and a radar screen are deadlier than a samurai sword. So, I have to ask you, do you think the American strategy of starving them out was an act of mercy to save Allied lives? Or was it a fate more cruel than death? And was Admiral Koga's decision to rush his fleet to Rabaul an act of honor or foolish pride? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit like and subscribe to Fireline. We are working on more untold stories of strategy and survival. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next front line.